The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
This is the special edition of the checkpoints that we're doing today. I'm Elene Kvanchilashvili, executive editor of Forbes Georgia, and with me today as an old tradition, we'll be working Giorgi Isakadze, who is the editor-in-chief of Forbes in Georgia. We have very distinguished guests today. EU ambassador and also a president of the European Business Association. Thank you for being with us and thank you for taking time.
Happy to host you, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
So we will start with the hottest topic for today, and that's definitely the draft law on agents of foreign influence. To me, one of the signs when the business community starts speaking out is that something fundamentally wrong has resurfaced. I would say that business community started speaking more loudly, even more loudly, after you had a very direct message to the government that this law would contradict to at least two conditions out of 12 conditions that Georgia needs to get candidate status. What does this whole picture tell you? Shall we have the law? That is my first question. And what are those conditions that this law would definitely contradict?
Thank you for the question. It's not an easy question to answer because I am a diplomat, I'm a foreigner living in Georgia and trying to make sure that Georgia moves forward on its aspirations towards membership in the European Union. These are the aspirations that have been enshrined in the Georgian constitution. These are the aspirations shared by the vast majority of Georgians, of Georgia citizens. And this is also the stated goal of the Georgian government, which, by the way, is also shared by practically every political party in Georgia, at least every political party that I managed to get in touch with and to discuss the issue of the direction that the country is going. So I would say this is a stated goal. The process is ongoing. The process is very well advanced. Georgia received a European perspective last year, which from my point of view has been truly a historic achievement. And Georgia also received 12 priorities in order to move forward to the next step in the process of European integration. And here we have an initiative that is inconsistent with European values and European norms. And I understand that in a democratic country there is a possibility for discussion, there is a possibility for reflection, but also as a representative of the European Union, I have a duty in order to say from the very beginning, at the very early stage of this discussion, that such a law would be simply inconsistent with who we are as European Union. You asked me a question about exactly in which of the 12 priorities there is inconsistency. This is priority number 7 and priority number 10. One concerns civil society, the other one concerns freedom of media. As European Union, we have been always extremely supportive of the work of the civil society. Vibrant civil society, free media, these are the fundamentals of every democracy. And we have seen everywhere, including in Georgia, how important the work of different civil society organizations has been across the board, especially in the regions, especially when it comes to working with minorities, vulnerable people. So in our view, all of us, we should protect and we should encourage the development of civil society and not to stigmatize and undermine the efforts of thousands of people who are doing a great job. So I understand that we are in a moment where reflection is ongoing, and we wanted to make sure, by the way, not only us, because United Nations, Council of Europe, and many countries bilaterally have voiced very strong concerns about this initiative.
Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned the wording stigmatization, which is also a part of arguments coming from the chairperson of Georgian parliament while he is discussing, and one of the arguments he might bring, or he already did within the discussion, we're not aware of the details of your internal meetings, was we should not be stigmatizing the process itself of public discussion. Why it is so crucially important to have preliminary suggestions in regards of this draft law, which was by some chance initiated by the different political force, but still we're paying more attention, and the feedback we have only from the governing party. So there's a big mix happening. So whether we find some arguments against stigmatization coming from the chairperson.
Look, I mean, I have been in Georgia for several months now.
Correct.
And I have noticed that the political language is very intense, is very emotional. And
everything is emotional.
There are a lot of very strong adjectives used by everyone. So I understand that this is also part of the character of Georgian people, to be very emotional, to be very outspoken, and this, of course, we accept. But at the same time, I think it's in everyone's interest to calm down the temperature. Especially when we are discussing issues that are very serious and that are directly affecting the very nature of the political system of the country. So, of course, Georgia is a democratic country. It's a vibrant democracy, and what we are witnessing over the last couple of days due to this initiative is a best proof that this is the case. However, not putting into question a right to discuss and reflect on different initiatives, I think that the voice not only of the international community, but also the voice of the stakeholders should be heard. Yeah. And I myself have been approached by many civil society organizations who feel extremely affected and who fear that in case this initiative translates into law, their further work in Georgia to the benefit of the Georgian society might be seriously hampered.
Yes, but everything has a context, right? I mean, we have a very vivid example of what happened after 2012 in Russia, when Russia passed this law. So is it any kind of stigmatization from anyone's side of not wanting that precedent in Georgia?
Look, we also have a similar case inside the European Union. So I think that the example of Russia is very well known, but let me also tell you that one of our member states attempted to have similar legislation, and the European Court of Justice has clearly pronounced its negative opinion. So there is a clear inconsistency when it comes to so-called foreign agents law and the values and the principles of the European Union. And I'm really glad that I'm sitting next to John, to the president of the European Business Association, because a couple of days ago also we have seen that several business associations also pronounced themselves on this issue. So this is another example of the fact that this is not international community or EU member states or EU ambassador making noise.
Or only diplomats.
But this issue has profoundly affected already citizens of this country, and especially those who are involved in and very often they do it because of their conviction, strong conviction, in order to, to help, to reach out to, especially to those who are weaker and more vulnerable, and to help them.
Before giving a small break to Ambassador, you meant about the precedent coming from one of the EU member country. You meant Hungary, am I right?
Well, I mean,
no? He doesn't want to say Hungary.
You can go to, you can even Google this,
thank you, sir.
And it will be crystal clear.
John, I'm just following Mr. Ambassador's issue. It was not only your association you're chairing. I mean, it was the major associations from Georgia which are focusing on major values for the private sector and doing it last 30 years.
Yeah, correct.
The crew and the speak up coming from the business community, as Elene has mentioned, it's quite rare. Government agencies, including Parliament, they are one of your major stakeholders and partners within doing a lot of business for the better business environment here. Please tell me how it was coordinated and what's the spirit.
Thank you. First of all, I have to echo what the ambassador is telling. I completely agree with that. And I would add, from the business perspective, it just harms business to have these kind of laws. It just harms the business investment climate, which we, like you're mentioning, for years working on to have the good business climate. We do not need now this kind of laws, which are hampering investors. Investors already now today asking us, so we want to invest in Georgia. What about this draft law? What's going to happen? So it's already harming us. And as a business association, we are non-political. We are working with every government to solve, through public-private dialogue, all issues we have, and we have actually a good track record for communication with that. But on that part, we as the business association, together with AmCham, EU Georgia Business Council, and the German association, we needed to speak up, because for us it is just wrong, just harming the business environment, and we cannot allow that. Okay,
I have one question in that regard. The main message that was coming, it was coming from the U.S. ambassador, if I am right, and she said very plainly that every MP that helps this draft law to turn into a law takes a personal responsibility to go against the aspirations that Georgia has on its path to the Euro-Atlantic integration. Would you say the same about the businesses who decide to be silent? I know that is a very tough question for you, but I just had to
exactly,
ask it.
And that's actually when we as Business Association also decided, when we made the statement, we didn't send a statement to the journalist or anything. We sent a statement to the Chairman of Parliament because we don't want to add to a polarization. Again, we think it is very important. The European Business Association has its vision. Doing trade in Georgia will be the same as doing trade as in Europe. That's our vision. It's totally not according to our vision, this new draft laws coming in.
One more tough question. Is it a signal for you that part of the business community believes that this draft law has a personal support of Mr. Bidzina Ivanishvili?
Oh, I would not know that. I can only tell that when we had the situation, the draft law. I'm not speaking here on behalf of myself, of my company. I'm speaking here because I am pushed by my members, more than 100 members who are trading with Europe, who are European companies trading in Georgia, who are asking me, please, John, speak up. Please inform that we would not like to have this, that we think it is a danger. And I think I always, as the chairman and the president of the European Business Association, had to step back for these kind of statements to make, for any kind of statements to make, because we are not the persons also to make statement. That is the politics, the diplomats, that's not our job. Our job is to do our business and to have, through public-private dialogue, communication with government and solving the things for the businesses. We were forced now to also to speak up on that one, and I still think we do it on a correct way. So we send our letter to the Chairman of Parliament, we send it also to the Prime Minister, just that they understand our concern. And I think it is obvious again that it's hurting the business environment and we should not proceed with that.
It's also obvious while media is covering this, and we are just highlighting the issues what Mr. Ambassador has mentioned in his intro about the constitution of Georgia, about the will, at least of the majority of this country, and I'm not taking into consideration any generation of this community and society. So I remember everything in this country. I'm 47 years old, so we also have our own personal duties. That's my personal message as an editor-in-chief of Forbes. Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned that this initiative is against from 12 points which are already presented to us, number 7 and number 8. 10, sorry. Number 7 and number 10. Could you be more specific how Georgia is generally doing about all 12 directions? And I will give you just in advance my precise interest personally of mine. I do have a feeling that in some directions from these 12 points, whether we will be lucky enough to have a candidate status in the nearest, there are some liabilities which are going to be fulfilled, but fulfilled and done, but nobody knows it's going to be verified or not. So it's going to be like done on the paper. That's a feeling, and that's why you are here to say that and confirm what we have, the message just a few weeks ago from EU, that Georgia has a good progress in fulfilling this, and at the same time eliminate all these feelings I might have as a media guy today. Because I should always be suspicious, and in regards of EU, we are considered like triple suspicious, to have everything fulfilled in the best possible way.
The answer is simple and difficult. Simple because it is work in progress. It is work in progress. The work will be assessed with a report done by the European Commission. The report will be published in October. Actually, we have already started working on the first draft. This will be a very transparent and very inclusive process. We have approached the government formally with a letter from Commissioner Varhelyi to the Foreign Minister. We will be talking to all the line ministries. We will also involve civil society. We will involve international community. This process will be going on for several months. And the report, merit-based, factual report about the state of implementation of 12 priorities will be published by the European Commission in October this year. Then you will have 27 EU member states at the highest political level. This will probably happen in December this year. So we are talking still in 10 months, and in 10 months a lot can happen. That based on the report, so the presidents and prime ministers will have report in front of them, and then they will take a decision how and if to proceed. But again, I sincerely hope that Georgia will be granted candidate status, but this is not the end of the road. Even if certain priorities will not be fully fulfilled, and I understand, it's clear, everyone understands that some of them are actually quite difficult to fulfill in the time frame of several months. You will need years in order to implement, especially those recommendations that are political, like depolarization, de-oligarchization, even judicial reforms. It takes sometimes many years. But what we want to see movement in the right direction. We want to see progress on all 12 priorities. Some probably, I hope, will be fully fulfilled, others will be partially fulfilled, but the direction will be positive. And this is the most important thing. At the end, the decision will be in the hands of 27 member states. So it is also extremely important to send right messages that can help EU member states to make a positive assessment and decide positively.
If I would maybe may add something to that. The 12-point programs, there's nothing directly mentioned about business, but all 12 points are connected to business. I don't think we should wait to October and try to just get the dots, like you mentioned, crossed and let's go for it. No, it is important that we are working now on them, and the business climate will change. If these 12 points are implemented correctly, this business climate will be better in Georgia.
George, would some interim reports coming from the government help? For example, we are working on the loan de-oligarchization, or we are now setting up anti-corruption bureau. This is what we have done, because we haven't seen any of these reports. We are just listening to the officials that are saying one thing, then we are listening to the civil society that is saying completely different. I mean, would that help for you when you are communicating with investors, for example, when they ask, where is Georgia going?
Exactly. We had 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting, the EBA members, with the chairman of Parliament of Georgia. And we exactly discussed that we want to have the business more involved in the discussion points, in the 12 points for implementation, and that we have a better communication. It's even in the interest of the Parliament on that part, because they can have the business as a partner in these things to do the implementation, because it is not the European Union who has only the 12 points, it is the own European businesses in Georgia and Georgian businesses in Georgia who wants to have. We want to have European standards, we want to have the European values here. We want it as a business. And I'm not speaking now as a Belgian who just arrived in Georgia. As George was telling, 47, we have the same age, but I'm already here for 23 years in Georgia. So I know after 23 years how the business looks like and how it should look like.
Yes. Actually, Mr. Ambassador, European Council or the Europe more broadly didn't ask the government to have this interim reports either submitted to you or submitted to us as the beneficiaries of the whole process. What was the logic behind that? Why didn't you say that this kind of transparency might work better?
Last June, Georgia has been given European perspective. From my point of view, truly historic achievement. As for many, many years, we had internally inside the European Union many discussions about eligibility of Georgia to become a member of the European Union. These discussions are closed with the decision taken by the European Council. It means at the highest political level that yes, Georgia is eligible, yes, Georgia can become member of the European Union, but there are certain procedures and there are certain rules that Georgia needs to follow. And these procedures and rules have not been designed specifically for Georgia. They have been designed for all countries that want to join the European Union some time ago. And successive waves of enlargement, they were all happening based on the same criteria. And we call those criteria Copenhagen criteria. And this is democracy, rule of law, human rights, rights of minorities, and market economy. This has been translated, these general criteria, they have been translated into 12 priorities. And the leaders in June last year agreed that they will meet after some time and they will assess the progress made by Georgia when it comes to those 12 priorities. And this meeting to assess the progress made will happen in December this year, based on the report that we will publish as European Union, as the European Commission, in October. So I'm not sure that there is any need for any interim action, also due to the fact that we have channels of communication open. I mean, you have high EU officials talking to high Georgian officials all the time. And this is a very intensive dialogue. So the feedback is, is there all the time. You have Georgia has a very active ambassador in Brussels. I'm trying to do my job as good as I can here in Tbilisi. So we are passing the messages all the time. And as you have rightly mentioned, we also had analytical report that described the state of preparedness of the Georgian administration that was published only several weeks ago, which overall is very positive. And I was the first one to congratulate the Georgian government, the Georgian administration, for a job very well done. The work is in progress.
Yes, and so you don't see this risk that we as the citizens of Georgia see that, for example, if you say in December that Georgia's government hasn't done well, there is some time to do some work? Because that is my question. I mean, this is very important for me as the Georgian citizen that we get the candidate status and we get it within the deadline, which is also very, very important. Whatever high officials might say, I heard yesterday one of the high officials saying that, European Union is not end in itself, but for many Georgians, it is end in itself.
Two issues. First, there's no deadline. There is a meeting that most probably will happen December this year, and EU leaders during that meeting should discuss what to do not only with Georgia, but also with Ukraine and Moldova and with Georgia. But there's no deadline. Depending on where the three countries, in what place they will be, a decision will be made. But it's not a deadline in the sense that they can meet 2 months later or 3 months later and resume the discussion. So there is no deadline. Then the broader point that you are making, and I think this is really essential, that what does it mean, European Union membership and integration process? This is, of course, a strategic choice, and I know that the vast majority of Georgian people are in favor of membership in the European Union. I know that this is enshrined in your constitution. I know that already many steps have been done. Association agreement, free trade agreement, visa-free agreement. So we are progressing on this way. Historic development last year, European perspective. The next step should be candidate status. I hope it will come in December this year, but it will not be the last step. After the candidate status, there will be many further steps. We will have to open negotiations in different chapters, then close the negotiations in each chapter. So this will unfortunately last for some time. And again, this is nothing specific about Georgia. This is how the process has been designed for everyone. The problem is that this requires on every step unanimous decision of all 27 EU member states. So all 27 EU member states should feel comfortable with advancing forward on the path towards EU membership with Georgia, as well with Ukraine and as well with Moldova. And here it is very important not to send wrong signals, because those signals can be used in order to delay, to stop, or even to reverse the integration process.
Yes, to get rid of this draft law that we have been discussing for quite some time as the wrong signal. That's personally my point of view. And this question goes to both of you. You mentioned visa-free agreement. Visa liberalization is the best thing that could happen to Georgian citizens, to businesses, and we are unanimous in that respect. So let me remind you what J.Braeckeveldt said just a few days ago, that if not visa liberalization in 2018, 2021, the migration might not have been that fast. We wouldn't get such big figures. In any other circumstances, this analysis might have been okay, because yes, we know that where in countries that are stronger, that have more democracy, that have higher salaries, yes, people might migrate, and we have many examples. But in this context, when we are on the path of the candidate status, when we have this draft law, what kind of signal is that for those 27 member states that have to give us an unanimous vote whether or not to grant Georgia candidate status? George.
Please, John.
If I may take this one. Thank you very much. Very interesting topic you opened there. First, the visa-free regime, which was introduced. I always have the motto at the European Business Association: youth leads with values, with European values. And we clearly see that we have our own EBA youth board who is promoting and telling how the EBA further has to grow. And if you speak to these people, these are amazing people, much more clever than I'm sitting here. And how it comes? Because they have a knowledge. They went to Europe. Visa-free regime made sure they could see how it is living in Europe and bring that back here. So this is very important. That was actually the biggest milestone in the last years that I saw, that is visa-free regime. And now it's utilized by the students. Erasmus programs also you have, and it helps to level up Georgia to European standards. Another point also that you mentioned also with people leaving the country, that's a big discussion topic going on here. I don't see that as a bad thing, strangely told. because as a Belgian, I know we are too expensive for services, and we always, in all the last 20 years, we had all the Polish, the Bulgarian, Romanian people coming to Western Europe for employment and then taking the money back home later. And why now suddenly Georgia? Because the Polish, the Bulgarian, Romanian, Eastern Europe is becoming too expensive, so it goes to Georgia. And yes, we have, let's admit, we will have a brain drain. Yes, admit it's difficult for us. But at the end of the day, these people will come back with the knowledge and with the companies even set up. So I think this is something you cannot say, let's stop it now. That is not possible. Let's go on with it. Let's make sure these people that who decide to leave to Europe, that they know there's a Georgia to come back, which is the same European standards, European values, and they can do their job also from here. So.
Yes, Giorgi, I remember the interview with Michael Honigstein, and he said this very beautiful phrase that I know, that's why we want Georgia to be part of the EU, because why leave EU when you can be in EU, right? And this is a very, very clear message to me.
Mr. Ambassador, I do have final political question in this regards. Everybody knows my sphere of interest is business and economic, but at the same time, you are very much aware about the values and the goal we are following. All the generations, not only mine. Could you be so kind to tell me how crucially important during the process happening in Georgia is the situation happening with President Saakashvili and Nika Gvaramia? I'm not touching anything personal in regards of Nika as a colleague, but at the same time, I want to send some messages with great help of yours and to clear the situation in regards of these two personalities.
And just very shortly to add on Nika Gvaramia's part is that would you say that we got this draft law because there was this precedent with Nika Gvaramia putting him in jail?
I'm answering your question immediately. I don't quite understand the connection that you make between the case of Mr. Gvaramia.
Elene will follow. After your.
Yes.
But I'm glad that you are mentioning both the case of the former President Saakashvili and the case of Mr. Gvaramia, because both are very relevant and both are very important. On President Saakashvili, as European Union, of course, we are very concerned with the reports about his deteriorating health. We have repeatedly called on relevant authorities in Georgia, reminding them that this is their obligation, including under international law, to respect all the rights of the former president as a defendant in court, but also as a prisoner. His health is also not his personal responsibility, as he is a prisoner, but also responsibility of the state. You know that several days ago we did an EU 27 démarche. This démarche has been agreed again by unanimity by all EU member states. We did it because we feel that the current situation unfortunately adds to the polarization. And a way should be found in order to get out of the current situation. You know that main opposition party is considering boycotting their participation in parliamentary work, which would be extremely unfortunate for the Georgian democracy. And as closest partner of Georgia, European Union stands ready to help we want to assist in case our assistance will be of help to the Georgian government. On Mr. Gvaramia, we have raised our concerns. We were following the concerns expressed by the public defender. Sorry. We are where we are, and we haven't forgotten about him. Of course, as European Union, we cannot, we should not, and we will not put into question the decisions of the courts. However, we remind repeatedly Georgian authorities that this is their responsibility in order to make sure that all the rights, especially rights of those who are in prison, are fully respected.
What do you expect from the opposition to do in this situation? And I often say that sometimes it feels like we are not, and the opposition itself is not participating into the process. I mean, it cannot change anything because we've seen a lot of laws, we've seen, and it kind of like adds to the polarization. And this is a very strange thing. In democracy, their participation needs to be regarded as polarizing, but we are not seeing that. And that was my question with Nika Gvaramia as well. What do you see could the opposition, NGOs, like us or the citizens of Georgia doing to have this hold on the situation?
From the very beginning, the message from our side has been very consistent, and we are trying to encourage the government of Georgia to be inclusive, to reach out to the opposition, to reach out to the civil society. And this does not mean only open the door for participation in different meetings, but it also means taking on board different ideas, different initiatives that are coming from the side of the opposition and of the civil society. We were always also very consistent with the opposition, passing a very strong message to the opposition: be constructive, engage, remain engaged. The place to discuss the differences is the Georgian parliament and not the street. Of course, in every democratic country, there is a possibility to peacefully manifest your views, but a place to discuss about the laws and the rules is the parliament. And what I would like to stress is that, especially when it comes to European integration, what is key is national consensus. What is key is, in spite of all the differences that might exist, to have agreement between party lines, to speak in one voice, to support each other, to show a unified position, because it is in the interest of the country. This unique window of opportunity with the European perspective should be used to the maximum. And what is striking is that if you talk to the representatives of different political parties, they are all on the same line. They all want European Union membership. What is absolutely needed is national consensus. Everyone working together in the same direction.
Tijan, as you absolutely correctly mentioned, all these 12 priorities mentioned and sent by you to us, they're not directly, stated or mentioned about business or general economic system. At the same time, all of them are touching those values, those basics, where we're trying to speed up to have more growth, when we're both proud to have to digital growth, etc., etc. How do you evaluate the progress we're doing? And you might speak on behalf of yourself, on behalf of EBA, as you know, but at the same time, from a person I know quite well, I want to have a feeling how we're progressing in these regards.
Well, it's funny you mentioned, it's again a very good question, that the 12 points. We had last year, the European Business Association organized its first EU-Georgia Business Forum.
Correct.
And we presented on that part the EU Business Climate Report, which is published online, available. And if you see there are more than 2,000 EU companies in Georgia operating who are requested to go and give their voice, what are the problems. And if you see the problems, the first 12 problems goes to the 12-point program. So it is directly connected. It's the same feeling of the business also, what we need to elevate our business. The business is already active in Georgia, and I'm sorry, the business, my members, the EBA members, even other associations also I'm meeting, extraordinary. The people, startup community, excellent. They are working it, they are ready. We just need to give them the extra push on that one. And these 12 points, among others, good communication, to have these forums to organize, to represent Georgia as really the place to do the business in. We need to do it more, and that's why the link is so close to these kind of things also. Business wants more. Business at the end, I cannot tell I have to tell also personally why I am a member of a business association. Why do I want to bring in more investment here? Very simple, because I want to do also more business. Like 99% of the Georgian businesses, they want to do more business also. So that's why we have
the DNA of business, more.
Absolutely, but that is how it goes, that's life host, and that's we need to promote more further.
Yes, the only thing I wanted to add, what Ambassador Herczynski has mentioned, the DNA of the Georgian community, Georgian population, Georgian citizens. It's a DNA that we are following EU values, and we will follow that.
And why we got the European perspective, Mr. Herczynski, sorry for making these conclusions, but was because of the how business community has followed the CFTA rules, because there we had the highest points, and also Georgian people who stated in so many forms, in so many ways before we got to the announcement whether Georgia got or not the candidate status, that they wanted the status and that their aspirations stand strongly. My question to you, Mr. Ambassador, is that currently we see this window of the opportunity not only on the political side but also on the economic side, right? Because we have this very large project that Georgia is looking for, and that's the cable project, and we now see how Europe is for its energy diversification. We see some of the resources that Georgia has definitely. Is it possible, and will it be possible to cooperate with Georgia on these specific topics in business if the Europe does not see the aspirations that Georgia once had and has, but if that comes to that, because that's what we get as one of the arguments. You know, there are many countries in the world where EU is cooperating, and they are not part of the EU. They are not even democracies, so to say. Is that possible in case of Georgia?
We already today have a very solid background and very solid legal framework in order to cooperate closely economically. We have since 2014 association agreement, DCFTA, and visa-free regime. So this economic cooperation has been expanding steadily over many years. European Union has been very reliable, very predictable, and very solid economic partner of Georgia. We have huge plans with our economic and investment plan, with our flagships projects. The first flagship project is the electric cable under the Black Sea that you have mentioned. And this is a cooperation that has been going on and will be going on independently of the fact of Georgia becoming or not becoming a member of the European Union. Because we are talking about two completely different issues. Economic cooperation can go on with Georgia inside the European Union and Georgia being a third country. But what we want when it comes to Georgia on part of the European Union is to welcome Georgia to the European family. What we want to have is for Georgian representative to sit around the table and to decide together about the direction in we will develop everything inside the European Union and as European Union with third countries. We want to have Georgia inside and not outside. Georgia is a European country. And as already mentioned by Giorgi, this is a choice of the Georgian citizens and of many generations of Georgians who have been working very hard to get to the place where you are now, and sometimes paying a very high price for this, including the highest price, the price of lives that have been lost. So we are in a very critical moment in which I think for the first time it is really a possibility. It is a real possibility. And let me quote my favorite quote from the speech of the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who in her most important speech of the year, we call it State of the Union speech, said that Georgia belongs to the European family. European family will not be complete without Georgia. I'm quoting from my head, but basically that's our approach. But it's for Georgians to decide. It's for the Georgians need to walk this journey. They need to decide themselves. And of course, as European Union, we will respect whatever the decision Georgians will take. My job here as EU ambassador in Tbilisi is to help as much as possible, to assist, to provide advice. But my job is not to take decisions. These decisions need to be taken by the Georgians. And what is also my responsibility is to say that the moment is now. The moment is now. And why? Because everything has accelerated dramatically. A year ago, Russia decided to invade a neighboring country. It's a completely unprovoked, unjustified, full-scale invasion, increasingly brutal invasion. We all are witnessing what's going on in Ukraine on a daily basis, looking at TV screens. We have been all shocked, and this has created a completely new momentum, not only for Ukraine, but for all Eastern Partnership countries, and especially for the associated trio. So the moment is now. And I sincerely hope that Georgians and Georgian political elites will act in order to seize this unique opportunity.
The checkpoint is presented by Gvaramia, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. Gvaramia, to serve those who need it most.